again to the second clip in the semantics chapter. Last time we talked about a sentence constituents, phrase markers, and complements and modifiers. If you want to check that out, click here. Now we want to deal with sentence structures and functions that can be performed by these structures. Look at this picture of our hostel room. You can make out certain larger areas, such as the kitchen area, the sleeping area, and the study. And we automatically recognize these larger areas because we experience their smaller components as belonging together. We also naturally group the smaller elements together because they perform a certain job. Like the structure of the kitchen performs the function of preparing food, or the structure of the resting area performs the function of sleep and recreation. Sentences work quite similarly. They have structures that are often larger than one word. These are called phrases. My favorite roommate is a noun phrase. It has internal organization and is made up of smaller constituents and serves a function, a grammatical function. That's the job a structure has in a sentence. The function of this structure is subject. Other structures can be used for the same function. So in our hostel room, the kitchen structure might be used for washing your clothes or cleaning your paintbrush. And the recreational structure might be used for studying instead of sleeping. The study area might be used for eating, and the dining room area might be used for studying. In syntax, this means that things like pronouns and whole clauses can carry out the job of subject. This proves that structure and function can't be the same thing, because otherwise the functions would automatically change along with the structures. So technically our gut feeling of words that belong together, so constituents, results from these structures performing a grammatical function within a sentence. Grammatical function is performed by a structure. And we kind of know grammatical structures from school. We have heard about subjects, objects, adverbials of place and time, and predicates. But how can we find out which grammatical function is fulfilled by a particular structure? We can get by with a little help from our friend, the phrase marker. He'll help us to deduct the grammatical function of a structure by determining the position of the constituents within the sentence. Remember what we said last time about phrase markers and nodes? A node is a part in a phrase marker that other constituents can branch off from. The constituents that branch off from the dominating node are partners on the same level in the hierarchy. In order to indicate their position, we can say that a constituent is left, or the left-hand partner, of the other constituent on the same level. Seems a bit complicated, but actually it isn't. It's enough to say the grammatical function of subject is performed by that structure that is immediately dominated by S and left-hand partner to the other constituent on the second level. And the predicate can be described the same way. The predicate is the structure immediately dominated by S and the right-hand partner of the other constituent on the second level. Remember in our first clip when we talked about clauses? Clauses usually consist of a full subject-predicate structure. Some clauses, however, don't fully express the subject-predicate structure. We call these clauses non-finite clauses because they contain a non-finite verb, so a verb that isn't tensed and therefore doesn't express past or present tense. Also, their subject isn't expressed, it is only implied. Defeated by the enemy, the platypus returned home. The first clause is non-finite. It has no tensed verb and no subject. The subject is implied. The ed participle clause here is called the passive participle clause. Other forms of clauses are the to infinitive clause, in sentences such as the platypus was eager to try out the new bed, and the ing participle clause, as in sentences like knowing that he had an addiction to shopping, the platypus continued buying bras. A clause on its own may form a complete sentence. However, complex and compound sentences consist of multiple, sometimes hierarchical clauses. There are different ways of combining clauses. One is coordination. Coordination is the linking of two elements of the same category on the same level of the phrase marker. Coordination therefore always follows the same formula, namely x splits up into two more x's. All sorts of structures can be coordinated, like words, phrases, and clauses. If clauses on the same level are coordinated, we call this compound sentences. Coordination is achieved by such words as and, or, and but. So if both clauses are equal and one doesn't dominate the other, it's a compound sentence. Clauses can also fulfill functions within other clauses. These sentences are called complex sentences. The clause that is served is called the main clause, and the clause doing the job is called the subordinate clause. Have a look at this sentence. Constantly tidying away empty pizza boxes, tired the platypus. Here, the bold clause performs the function of subject. It can be replaced by it, and it is dominated by s, and it is the left-hand partner of the verb phrase. Now that we can define grammatical functions, it is important we have a look at those structures that fulfill these functions. The smallest units that fulfill functions in sentences are words. Words belong to different lexical categories, such as nouns and verbs, adjectives and adverbs, prepositions and pronouns. These might seem familiar, as you might have talked about these in school. Now, phrases are strings of words, and these words belong together. They have a so-called head as their main element. Modifiers and complements support the head, but sometimes a head alone can make up a phrase. The head defines the type of phrase we are dealing with. So if the head is a noun, then the phrase is a noun phrase. The phrase inherits its properties from the head. The head is the least dispensable part of the phrase. Also, the other phrases within the sentence depend on each other. So the verb or the predicate is shaped according to the grammatical properties of the head of the phrase that performs as a subject. Important phrases along the noun phrase are the verb phrase, the adjective phrase, the adverb phrase, and the prepositional phrase. Whatever lexical category the head belongs to defines the type of phrase. Great, so let's just summarize this quickly. There is a difference between grammatical function and structure. Similar structures can perform different grammatical functions within sentences. The smallest structure to perform a function are words, and these words are often grouped in phrases. These phrases contain a head as their main element, and it determines the phrase's properties. The head is the least dispensable element of the phrase, and can also sometimes perform the same function if it were on its own. It also gives the phrase its name. The grammatical function of a structure depends on its position within a sentence. We can determine the position by looking at a phrase marker. A phrase marker consists of nodes at different levels. A node from which constituents branch off dominates the constituent at a lower level. The constituent and the same level are partners. The subject is the structure dominated by S and left-hand partner of the other constituent on level 2. That's it for now. Next clip we will be dealing with the verb phrase in more detail.